Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to today's webcast, Simplifying API Operations with AI and ML. My name is Manoj Gunti, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Google Cloud's Apigee API Management Platform. Before we begin the webcast, I want to quickly cover a few housekeeping items. What you see on the slide should resemble your webcast console. On the bottom left is the Q&A console where you can post questions at any time during the webcast. Please note that you don't have to wait until the end of the session to ask your questions. Feel free to post them anytime, and we will try to answer them during the end or offline after the webcast if we don't have enough time. I'll also be making a few references to resources in the webcast, and all the links to access them should be available in the resources console of your screen. With that, let's get started. In the past few years, Apigee has had the opportunity to work with more than 800 customers across the globe and across several different industries. Throughout this journey, we have observed that the role of APIs and API management has been evolving continuously. What used to be an agent for accessing various different systems is now actually an agent for driving digital transformation programs for enterprises. In this whole evolution, APIs have also broadened persona of users building and accessing them, and the persona that's delivering the outcome from these programs. While APIs continue to be built and consumed by developers, IT leadership, marketing, and other lines of business owners have started looking at APIs as something beyond just a small piece of technology to drive real digital transformation programs for their organizations. To give you a few examples, Magalu, formerly known as Magazine Luiza, is a large Brazilian retailer. They created an API facade between their front-end and back-end systems to migrate and modernize their applications with Google Cloud. Adding this facade actually helped them to ensure that the business is not disrupted during the entire transformation initiative, because the API management layer that they added was actually able to intelligently redirect the front-end traffic between the old and new backends continuously. Similarly, Bank BRI, a large bank in Indonesia, created new business opportunities using APIs. Bank BRI actually saw a huge potential in microfinancing in Indonesia, so they created a mobile app powered by Apigee, Google Maps API, and Vision API for people to self-ID themselves, check their credit scores, request for a loan, and also to get instant disbursement of the loan in just 2 minutes. But they didn't just stop there. They saw fintech companies entering into the market, and those companies did not have access to what Bank BRI had, which is the credit scoring services and the risk modeling services. So the company actually went about building more than 50 plus API products, which is very valuable information, and they started to monetize these to other fintech companies, and they were able to generate more than $15 million in revenue through monetization of those APIs. Similarly, Ticketmaster is now able to create a partner ecosystem by making their tickets available through partners like Costco, Facebook, and Groupon. So this enabled them to actually increase their revenue stream beyond traditionally selling tickets through their own platform. So these kind of examples basically give us the perspective that we are not solving small technical issues with APIs, but we are actually looking at large-scale digital transformation programs. So when APIs become so central to your programs and digital transformation journey, they need to be treated beyond just a small piece of technology. And you should really start looking at APIs and you should start managing your APIs as a business. In fact, Gartner recommends that CIOs should take an API-first approach to build their company's business models, digital strategy, and ecosystems. But what does managing APIs as a business mean? It means that enterprises should think and approach their API management strategy very differently from a people, process, and technology perspective. They need to think beyond developers. As I said, developers continue to build and consume APIs, but there are several other persona and teams that will feel the upstream impact of API programs can create. And we'll talk about that in more detail in just a minute. You need to start thinking beyond traditional API lifecycle. If your core business and customer experience is so dependent on APIs, then we need to question that if just building, securing, and publishing APIs is enough to solve these problems. And while an API gateway definitely orchestrates all the API transactions, the question to ask is that really enough to drive your company's larger goals? So if you start thinking about all these aspects, you will actually realize the upstream impact that APIs can create. When your core business critical applications are powered by APIs, imagine what impact any downtimes, performance degradations, or security incidents can have on your customers, partners, as well as employees who are using these applications built by developers on top of these APIs. Therefore, API operations becomes extremely critical to ensure that a connected and a seamless digital experience is delivered to all the stakeholders who are using the applications built by the developers. However, if we look at the current operations teams, they are under immense pressure. And some of their challenges are that if as an IT ops person or a SysOps person, how do I ensure that my APIs are always available, up and running? How do I make sure that they are performing as I expect? And if and when there is a security or an operational incident or an issue, how can I quickly diagnose, identify the root cause, and fix that issue? And I have to do all these things while I maintain my focus and not get distracted with all the false alert noise that is generated in the backend. And as a SecOps person, it is extremely important for me to ensure that all the APIs that are being published adhere to the compliance and security requirements. How do I protect sensitive information such as API keys against abuse from internal users? And at the same time, when there is a security incident, how do I quickly identify and diagnose and resolve that security incident? So these are some of the problems that the operations teams, and in smaller organizations, it's the API teams that have to go through this day in and day out. And in larger organizations, there are dedicated operations teams who are looking at several other systems on top of the APIs in their portfolio to manage on a day-to-day basis. But the good news is that as you build and scale your API programs, there is a gold mine of API data that gets collected across your entire API value chain, all the way from your backends to front-end consumers. And there is a great opportunity for you to harness the power of this data to actually solve some of the problems that we just discussed when it comes to managing API operations. So Google Cloud's Apigee API management platform now provides advanced API operations capabilities that harness the power of API data by applying some industry-leading best-of-the-breed AI and ML models to provide you with automated tools that can help you ensure that APIs are always available, they are secure, and performing as expected. As you can see from this slide, there is the entire API value chain. A lot of data gets collected as you grow your API programs, and we start applying all these AI and ML models on top of it to provide you with advanced capabilities like anomaly detection and security reporting. So let's take a quick look at what these advanced capabilities are, and we'll also spend some time doing a detailed demo of these features. So the first feature or advanced capability that I want to talk about is anomaly detection. Anomaly detection applies AI and ML to your historical time series of API data to predict the behavior of your APIs. It eliminates the manual effort involved in configuring thresholds on your alerts and adopts to the behavior patterns of your APIs. It also gives you the flexibility to adjust the various limits so that when you are focusing on your mission-critical task, you don't get distracted by false alerts. The other advanced capability is on the security reporting piece. Apigee's API security reporting gives you a holistic picture of the security health of your APIs. It can quickly identify security incidents. It can precisely diagnose the root cause and reduce the mean time to diagnosis of the security issues. It ensures that your APIs adhere to security compliance and also provides you monitoring capabilities for sensitive information to prevent any kind of internal abuse within the organization. So with that, let's take a quick look at what these features are, and we will get into a detailed demo now. So for those who are not familiar with Apigee, this is your Apigee landing page where you will see shortcuts to the specifications, API proxies, on all the API products that you create by combining different API proxies. You can also take a look at the portals, and then there is shortcuts to documentation and community links where you can post any questions for Apigee experts. And on the left-hand side, what you see is a menu that is aligned as per the API lifecycle of design, develop, publish, and analyze. So when you click on analyze, you will see a bunch of features, and these are the features that actually harness all the data that we discussed about to provide you with insights, insights for measuring the performance, measuring the availability, security, and also to understand the user engagement. So the last few links that you see in the menu are actually out-of-the-box reports, which actually leverage the data from your API programs to give you insights around what is the performance of my proxies, how are we doing on latency, how are my targets performing, etc. And you also have out-of-the-box reports on the developer engagement and also to analyze the composition of the traffic that is coming in. You can also look at the end user engagement, what are the types of devices that are generating the traffic, and on a geo map, how does your traffic come into the product. We also have a bunch of custom reporting capabilities. You can actually use various operational metrics to slice and dice your API data and get insights into things that your either the senior management or the IT leadership is asking for. And you can also use custom variables to actually configure some of the custom reports that you may want to extract, which is beyond the out-of-box capabilities that is available in the product. But without focusing too much, in this particular demo, I want to talk about the monitoring and security reporting capabilities and show you how AI and ML is put into action in anomaly detection and other features. The first thing that I want to talk about is API monitoring. When you click on Overview, this is the dashboard that a sysadmin or an IT admin of an enterprise will look in on a day-to-day basis to get a perspective of how the APIs are performing from an operational perspective. So you have a time series to understand the trend and the history of your APIs. And you also have investigation capabilities where you can drill down and diagnose an API incident through the logs. And you also have capabilities to configure and get notified about issues from various alerts. And at the same time, if you have a group of APIs or more than 2 APIs that you think are very, very important to your business and you want to constantly monitor them very closely, you can also create something called collections by grouping those APIs together and having monitoring capabilities more specifically on that particular collection. So let's actually now look at some of the events. So the events page here will give you an overview or the history of all the alerts that are triggered and the alerts and the anomalies that are triggered in the specific time frame that you can select here on the right-hand top corner. So if we look at the last 7 days for a test environment, you will see that there are a lot of alerts, and you can see the difference between an alert and an anomaly with a different icon that represents here. And when you click on one of the anomalies, you can actually delve deeper into the details. You can look at the environment that's creating this anomaly, which region is it coming from, and the duration of this. And you can also filter the details based on a proxy view, based on the target view, and also based on default code view. So let's get into the proxy view and look at some of the details. So here you will see the trend of this alert based on the time series, and you can also take a look at the proxy, and when you click on one of these details, you will actually look at more details in terms of the fault code, the fault policy, and the important thing that I want to focus here is on the fault source, which clearly says that this is not a problem with the proxy, but it's the backend which is causing the problem. And you can also look at the distribution by status code, distribution by app, and the distribution by target. What is very interesting here is within the screen itself, you can click on the logs and you can actually analyze the logs over a period of time and understand what exactly is happening with this proxy and why this alert has been triggered. To me, when we interact with a lot of customers, the most important or the most valuable thing for customers from this investigation feature is that without actually requiring to toggle multiple screens and analyze multiple systems like your backend logging tools and investigation tools, within one screen and within the Apigee environment itself, as an ops person, I'm able to look at the whole issue in one single view. I'm able to delve into the details. I'm able to understand where things are going wrong, and I'm actually able to figure out the root cause for this whole alert in just 1 or 2 clicks. What this would typically take several hours if you have multiple different tools and use a third-party monitoring tool to look at your APIs. And if your business-critical applications, like your payment systems and your loyalty systems, are dependent on APIs, then it can cause a lot of business disruption. So that's on the investigate view. And now let's actually go to security reporting. So before we go to security reporting, I actually forgot to show you a little bit on the anomaly detection. So when we click on the investigate page, as you see all the errors here, and when you click on this, you will see a lot of logs. And in the events, when you click on the test environment and change the duration, there are no alerts in the last 24 hours, so let's look at last 7 days. I wanted to show you how can you actually create an alert and how an anomaly alert is different from a regular alert. So when you create a new alert, you enter all the alert details over here. And now you can see the 3 different types of alerts that you can configure on the Apigee API management platform. The first one is a fixed alert, where you can select the environment and you can look at various metrics that you want to get alerted about. And here is the place where you can actually manually configure all the thresholds for some of the metrics that you want to monitor. This is the manual configuration and the fixed alert. But with anomaly detection, what you're actually doing is you're eliminating the whole manual process of setting the alerts, because in real life conditions, as your traffic and your environments keep changing and your customer behavior keeps changing, your APIs will have a definitive pattern that goes into it, and it is practically impossible for the ops person to go back every time and keep changing these alert thresholds in order to ensure that you don't get a lot of false alerts. So anomaly detection actually solves that problems for you, where you select the metric that you want to monitor, and you set the threshold in terms of the variance limits, which is slight, moderate, and severe. So if it is a very critical API, you may want to select the slight threshold, because even a slight deviation could be a bigger anomaly for you, and then it can severely impact your business. But if it is an API which is more for the backend pieces, then you can look at moderate or severe thresholds, and you can eliminate a lot of alert noise using that. So this clearly gives you a picture of how anomaly detection can totally reduce the effort that API operations teams put into the whole monitoring of all the APIs that you configure. And what we have recently also introduced is TLS expiry, wherein you can get alerted about the expiry of a specific certificate, and you can choose the time range when you want to receive an alert for that expiry of the certificate. And this is also developed on a popular demand by a lot of customers who want to make sure that their certificates are always live and up and running. So with that, hopefully this gave you a good understanding of anomaly detection. Now let's get into the security reporting piece. As I said, security reporting gives you a comprehensive, holistic view of the security health of your APIs. And the overview dashboard will start off with the traffic information on different environments that you have configured. It tells you how many proxies have active traffic out of all the proxies that you have deployed, how many of the proxies have shared flows, and how many shared flows that have been configured within this environment. And you can also see the traffic as well as the change in the traffic that you have encountered in the specified time range that you select here. And several customers have multi-region deployments, and security reporting also gives you the traffic based on different regions and also the error distribution by fault code for various different environments. Let's get into the runtime configuration. This component basically covers all the runtime aspects of your API. So what we see here is a test environment, and the view that you see here is a proxy view. And for the last 24 hours, these are all the proxies that have received traffic. And you can see that this particular proxy over here has received 100% or almost double the traffic that it is expected to receive. And the entire traffic has come from a non-HTTPS port. So definitely there is something going on here. So if you click on this, you can see more details in terms of where the traffic is coming from, what are the developer apps that are causing this traffic, and you will see virtual hosts and also the targets that have caused this traffic spike. It will be very interesting to look at the target view as well. And you can basically look at what are the different targets that are configured, what is the traffic change that is coming up for each and every traffic, and how many active proxies have been deployed for each of the traffic. Without this particular feature or without this particular screen, it will take enormous effort for a SecOps person to actually go and identify the traffic or the trends of the traffic that is coming up for various different targets and proxies. Similarly, we have various views for apps. You can see which developer apps are actually generating traffic for you and which developer apps are behaving very differently. For example, if you see 200, 300% spike in the traffic coming from one particular developer app, maybe it is a bot that's generating the traffic, and that will give you an idea of which developer apps you can go ahead and block it as you see patterns of traffic coming from the other developer apps. Similarly, a fault code view, the number of proxies that are affected by the fault code, how many times has this occurred, and the percentage change that you get into it. And each of these views come with detailed information on the configurations of it, on the traffics, and the backend targets that are getting impacted. So in one particular screen, you have all the information that you need to look into this problem in much more detail. The other component that I want to talk about is configuration, which addresses the design time governance issues of the security reporting. So if we look at the test environment, configuration gives you the list of all the proxies, and in one comprehensive view, you can look at the different types of policies that have been configured for each and every proxy. So with the labeling, you can see that this is a traffic policy, there is a security policies, and there are extension policies that are configured for all these different proxies, the number of shared ports that are here, whether this particular proxy is receiving traffic from HTTPS and non-HTTPS as well. And when we click on one of these, you can actually see the list of all the proxies that have been, all the policies that have been configured for this particular proxy, and also get a quick view of the shared flows as well. And if you are a SecOps person and if you have mandates within your organization that each and every proxy has to go through, let's say, X or Y number of policies, then you can actually look at the shared flow or the policy views to ensure that all the shared flows or the policies have been configured for all the proxies. So if we take one particular example, you know that your organization has, let's say, 63 proxies, and this particular shared flow, if there is a mandate that all the proxies need to be configured with this shared flow, you can see that 2 of your proxies have actually missed this shared flow configuration, right? And you can look at the list and you can take a quick action on which proxies have been missing, and then you can immediately delve down or contact the right person or the developer who has created that proxy to have that shared flow immediately configured. So in are adhering to security and compliance requirements. There's also user activity. This is a sample email that we created. User activity basically gives you an understanding of all the users within that particular org who have been accessing your proxies either through the UI or through APIs as well. So you can see that if there is a large change in the access to sensitive information, then one particular user can be contacted and he or she can be blocked because of some suspicious activity that's happening in the backend. So that's security reporting. And one thing that I wanted to highlight before we jump back into the slides is that everything that you see and do within Apigee in the UI console can also be done outside of Apigee with a bunch of management APIs, which gives you the capability to extract and perform all these activities in the platform of your choice outside of Apigee as well. So that's one important thing to know. And we looked at API monitoring, security reporting, and anomaly detection. Hopefully this gave you a good understanding of how this works within the Apigee platform. So let's go back to the slides and talk a little bit about how you can actually start using these new cool features. So if you're an existing Apigee Enterprise Cloud customer, then there is a good chance that you already have these features enabled in your system. So we encourage you to join our beta program and start using these features right away. And you can visit docs.googleapigee.com to get step-by-step guidance on how to use these features. And if you have any questions, you can always contact the Apigee team or the support team who will be more than happy to guide you to use these features. And if you are not an Apigee customer yet, please go ahead and sign up for the free trial using the link that will be available in the resources console. And if you are not able to see that link for some reason, we will also send you a follow-up email with the link to sign up for the trial. We also have published a lot of ebooks very recently, and these ebooks will equip you with the best practices and guidelines on how you can fuel your API programs with insights, including some of the customer examples as well. We have a lot of customers who have tried out these features, and there are detailed case studies on how this is actually helping them simplify API operations, make their life more easy, and most importantly, solve some business-critical problems for their business. And if you are in the process of currently evaluating an API management platform, we also have the recent Gartner Magic Quadrant report for API management lifecycle. You can use this report to weigh the pros and cons of various API management platforms that are available out there in the market, and you can see Gartner's recommendations on how Apigee actually differentiates in this space. With that, let's take a quick look at some of the questions that we have. Please feel free to post them while I'm answering the other questions, and we will try and address them here. If not, we will go back and answer them offline for you to review this. The first question that we have is, how can AI and ML monetize the APIs? That's a very interesting question. So Apigee has a built-in, out-of-the-box API monetization platform as well. In the entire API lifecycle, if you look at various stages, the first one is design, develop, secure, publish, and then you start to monitor them using monitoring and security reporting that we discussed. And the last step is about monetizing these APIs. API monetization component of Apigee gives you the flexibility to create API products, and you can create you can create rate plans and business models like revenue sharing. You can have subscription model. You can have a consumption-based model, and you can also have integrations with various payment providers to start monetizing those APIs. And at the same time, there are a bunch of reports that you can generate in terms of which API products are generating revenue for your organization, which are not performing well, for you to make a decision on where to invest in the future. Hopefully that answers your question. The other question is, how does Apigee compare with public CSPs like AWS Gateway? This is a very good question. So AWS provides an API gateway as well, but the way Apigee differentiates or compares with AWS Gateway is that Apigee provides you a full-fledged lifecycle capabilities, not just an API gateway. We believe that to solve your business problems with APIs, just a gateway is not sufficient. You will need lifecycle capabilities like publishing your APIs, securing your APIs, detection of bot attacks. How do you actually monitor and monetize your APIs? These are the kind of things that Apigee brings into the table compared to other gateway providers out there. Let's see what other questions we have. Do a person have to log into the web page to see the alerts, or can this be configured to deliver in the inbox? This is a very good question, and it's my bad that I did not cover this as part of my demo. I had to emphasize the fact that you don't have to log in into the Apigee platform to see the alerts. That would be just not the right way to do it. Apigee provides you the capability to have those alerts delivered through email, Slack, or even webhooks that you can use to configure to the platforms that you are comfortable with, or that you are already using it in the backend for monitoring other systems. So the short answer to that is yes, you can do inbox, you can do mail, you can do Slack, or you can do other other messaging services as well. The other question we have is whether this is available on OPDK or cloud. All the features that we discussed today are available only for Apigee Enterprise Cloud subscription customers only, and it is currently not available for OPDK. Do we have specific documentation on API security? Yes, we do have specific documentation on all the features that we discussed today. We will be sending you a follow-up email shortly after this webcast, and that email will have links to documentation for both anomaly detection as well as security reporting. We also have, again, question on how capable is this? How comparable is this from Nginx Gateway or Dell Boomi? Again, I think I kind of answered this question. This is totally different from a gateway. You need an API full lifecycle management platform to solve these problems. And Dell Boomi, to me, I consider it more of an integration platform, but not more on the API management piece. What are the areas or menu options in your portal which support API, AI and ML features? So anomaly detection is the piece that is totally powered by AI and ML. When you have to manually set the thresholds in various alerts, and when you compare that with anomaly detection, the system actually uses AI and ML by actually applying those principles to a time series of data in the backend, and it will use those models to predict an anomaly, and it will notify you based on that, based on variants that you have configured. We have more questions on whether this is available on public cloud versus private cloud. Let's see, what do we have? Does Apigee Micro Gateway substitute or complement service mesh capabilities? This is a slightly deviation from the topic, but I think it is important to address that as well. So Micro Gateway is more for customers who are trying to solve latency issues and who do not want to completely adopt the cloud platform, where they want to have some pieces in on-premise and use the micro gateway to reduce the latency. Apigee has also recently introduced Apigee Hybrid, which is much beyond just a micro gateway, where you can have your runtime components managed by you in the cloud or on-premise of your choice. At the same time, you can also leverage cloud capabilities like analytics and the management plane through Apigee in a hybrid model. And when it comes to comparing API management with the service mesh capabilities, I think service mesh is where you kind of monitor, when you kind of manage all your microservices within the platform of your choice, and API management sits on top of the service mesh, providing you capabilities like security, ability to publish these reports, publish these APIs for external consumption, and also to have monitoring and monetization capabilities built on top of the service mesh. So hopefully that clarifies the question. Do you have design best practices for B2C, B2B, and B2E? Yes, we have a lot of ebooks. If you go to cloud.google.com/resources, you will see a bunch of resources for API management that are specifically focused on the best practices for designing, securing, and publishing APIs. How different is API monitoring compared to Apigee Sense? Interesting question. So API monitoring is more of, think of it as two different things that we discussed in the webinar. One is on the operational side, and the other one is on the security side. API monitoring addresses the operational metrics and the operational execution of APIs, but Apigee Sense is more on the real-time detection of bot attacks and how do you block the IPs that are generating malicious traffic for your APIs. Let's see if we have more questions. Is there a way to back up all configurations of Apigee in case of this? So there are two ways to address this question. I think Apigee provides you the capability to extract all the API data on a daily basis, on a periodic basis, through a feature called data export and asynchronous query. I would recommend you to look at the documentation for more information, where on a regular basis you can extract and have the backup of this data either in Google Cloud Storage or in BigQuery, or you can just export it as CVS and have it loaded in the platform of your choice. Unfortunately, this is all the questions that we are able to address at this point of time. Thank you so much for all the interest. These are very interesting questions. And those that we are not able to address, we will go ahead and respond to them offline. And you will also receive a follow-up email very soon with the links to the documentation, with the links to the best practices, resources, etc. And feel free to share the recording with your colleagues who are not able to join the webcast today. With that, thank you so much for joining us once again, and I hope you have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.